The first 30 seconds of this story reveal everything you need to know to understand why this scenario is one of the darkest and most fascinating ideas DC Comics has ever hinted at. Because in this video, you will discover what would happen if Black Adam stopped pretending to be a reluctant ruler and fully embraced global domination. How heroes would fail to stop him, not because they are weak, but because they hesitate. Why governments would collapse under the weight of fear disguised as peace. And how the world might actually become quieter, safer, and far more terrifying at the same time. All leading to a final question that will force you to rethink what saving the world really means when the one in charge believes mercy is a flaw and fear is the most efficient form of order. Imagine a world where Black Adam no longer limits himself to protecting Kahndaq, where the ancient champion decides that borders are just imaginary lines drawn by weak leaders. And where the lightning that once symbolized liberation now becomes the signature of absolute authority. Because in this version of reality, Black Adam looks at Earth and sees chaos, corruption, endless debates, and heroes who argue while civilians suffer. And instead of asking permission or forming alliances, he simply decides that the planet needs a ruler who does not ask, does not compromise, and does not hesitate. At first, the change feels subtle, almost reasonable, because crime rates begin to drop overnight in regions where Black Adam appears. Dictators vanish without trials, criminal organizations collapse in silence, and corrupt politicians suddenly resign after mysterious visits from a floating figure surrounded by ancient magic, and people start to whisper that maybe this terrifying God King is doing what no one else had the courage to do, which is exactly how the fear starts to feel like relief. What makes this scenario so disturbing is not the destruction, because there is surprisingly little of it, but the efficiency. Since Black Adam does not conquer through endless war, but through examples, choosing a few strategic displays of overwhelming power that spread faster than any army ever could. As satellites capture cities, surrendering without a single shot fired, not because they were attacked, but because no one wants to be the next lesson. The heroes, of course, respond, but not as a united force, because this is where the cracks begin to show. As Batman warns that Black Adam cannot be reasoned with, Superman believes there is still hope for dialogue. Wonder Woman understands the ancient mindset behind absolute rule, but fears its consequences, and the Justice League hesitates just long enough for Black Adam to establish something far worse than tyranny, which is stability enforced by terror. The most ironic part is that many civilians begin to support him, not because they love him, but because the world under his shadow feels safer than the world before. With fewer wars, fewer crimes, and no room for the kind of chaos that thrives when power is divided. And this is where the story becomes uncomfortable, because it asks whether freedom is still valuable when fear delivers results faster than hope ever did. Black Adam does not outlaw heroes, but he makes them irrelevant, because crime no longer rises to their level, conflicts never escalate, and villains either submit or disappear, leaving iconic heroes standing idle while the world moves on without them. And nothing scares a hero more than realizing they are no longer needed. Even magic users and cosmic beings begin to take notice, because Black Adam's rule is not just political, but mystical, drawing power from ancient gods who thrive on order and conquest, slowly shifting the balance of the DC universe itself as divine forces start favoring results over morality, and suddenly the idea of right and wrong feels very outdated. Attempts to overthrow him fail not because Black Adam is invincible, but because he understands psychology better than anyone else, always allowing resistance. Just enough space to expose itself before erasing it completely, turning rebellions into warnings and martyrs into forgotten footnotes while the world watches and learns the same lesson repeatedly, that resistance is optional, but consequences are guaranteed. The darkest moment comes when Superman finally confronts him. Not in a city-destroying battle, but in a quiet standoff that ends without a punch, because Black Adam forces Superman to face an impossible truth: that stopping him would plunge the world back into chaos, that removing him would cost millions of lives indirectly, and that being the symbol of hope suddenly feels like being the guardian of a broken system. What makes this scenario strangely humorous in a dark way is how humanity adapts. With memes celebrating lightning strikes as unexpected weather corrections, news channels praising record low crime rates while nervously avoiding Black Adam's name, and entire governments restructuring their laws overnight just to align with the expectations of a ruler who never issued a constitution, never gave a speech, and never cared about popularity. Over time, the world becomes eerily calm, flights are always on time, wars are history lessons, and fear replaces uncertainty, creating a civilization that functions perfectly, but feels hollow because no one dares to dream of change, when change itself feels dangerous. And this is when the question becomes unavoidable, whether the world is truly saved or simply silenced. In the end, Black Adam does not sit on a throne, does not wear a crown, and does not call himself king because his rule is not about symbolism. But inevitability, as the planet slowly accepts that resistance is inefficient, chaos is optional, and freedom is a concept that sounds beautiful until it becomes inconvenient. And that is why this is DC's darkest scenario. Not because everyone dies, but because almost everyone survives. Living in a world that works perfectly while quietly wondering if perfection achieved through fear is still worth calling peace? If you enjoyed this deep dive into one of DC's most unsettling scenarios, make sure to subscribe to the channel for more dark theories. Comic breakdowns and alternate timelines. Leave a comment sharing whether you think Black Adam would save the world or doom it. And Dan T, forget to share this video with other DC fans who love exploring the side of superheroes. That makes us question what being a hero truly means.